Okay, Colin. Adoption of agenda 2.1 recommendation.
The council adopt the agenda as presented.
Can I get a seconder?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Number 3, adoption of minutes of 3.1 recommendation.
The council adopt the minutes from a special meeting held on May 4th, 2020.
Second. Discussion.
Yes. On page 5, the motion by Councillor Drover in the special meeting that the village does not draw on general or other reserves for operational purposes without council approval first. I would like to have operational purposes
And
changed to infrastructure and 100% council approval.
can I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Okay, who's seconding? I just picked one, go ahead. All in favor? Okay. 3.2 recommendation.
The council adopt the minutes from the regular council meeting held on May 6th, 2020.
Second. Discussion? All in favor? Number 4, introduction of late items. We have late item 7.1. It's
Unfinished business.
is it?
Yeah.
It says late item.
Yeah, but it's under
Yeah, I need to
7.1.
say what it is.
Go for it.
Late item 7.1, and it's from Northwinds Healing Center. Public hearing none. Delegation 6.1 recommendation.
The council hearing presentation from Urban Systems.
Second.
This will be an electronic presentation.
Can I have a seconder?
Second.
Is that gonna work, Sam? Yes, it is. Don't touch any wire. Come on, work.
Tested it before.
Do you have to download it?
No.
No. Josh and I,
Call us up. I got a phone now because we're doing it. Might have to share the screen.
complicated process. You share screen,
Welcome to Tower Call Conferencing.
hit join
To your
meeting.
access code or meeting number followed by pound.
Oh, shout it fast nose.
Connect.
Smile, you're on candy cane.
No, it- There he is.
He's
There
there.
it is.
Yeah, he's just waiting for me.
Welcome to Tower Call Conferencing. Enter your attendee ID number followed by pound.
I just
If
did.
you do not know your attendee number,
Too
press
fast.
pound to continue.
Hey, Josh?
Hey there, how's it going?
Oh, hang on, I think we have you on the computer. Just a sec. Try talking.
Excuse me, yeah, you might want to mute the computer so it doesn't have a echo like that.
Use the mic on the computer.
Right.
I think you can mute it, maybe, Joe.
Looking to try to do that now.
There we go.
No, we gotta mute the mic here, Sandy, not the,
Hey, just a sec, Chris is gonna play more.
so we can leave the speakers, God, this.
Although if it's coming through there, we can turn this one off.
Yeah, mute that, please, Sam.
It is
You
muted.
can just turn the sound on the TV off, which should work too, and then we'll just come to the phone system.
I'm gonna hang up my phone because we can hear on the computer.
Okay, that works.
How's that? Can you hear us, Josh?
There we go.
Your name is on it.
Yep,
Okay.
that works.
Yeah, perfect.
And everybody, thank you
Yes.
for coming. You-
Okay, it's not the best.
I'll,
A little echoey
We can
when it
make it
comes
full
to it.
screen.
can you hear me better now, Josh?
Yeah, I can hear you, Chris.
Okay, so I'll sit close to the laptop here. Councilors are quite far away, so
Can we have a full screen?
Okay.
I'll relay the message.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for time for us. Yeah, I hope we can see the presentation already on the screen there. This is meant as a follow-up
It's as big as we can get it.
from, yeah.
Yeah, we've got good.
Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, we got it good.
Okay. Okay, well, again, thank you. The first, we just wanted to start with a quick read last time. The question I had is, what do you all remember from the last time Eric and I were down there to talk about asset management? And more importantly, what did you want to know more about?
Put away $1 million a year.
The water and the sewer, they were gonna come and give us some infrastructure, whatever. They were gonna come back and give us a report.
So Barb's saying water and sewer is one of the priority items, Josh?
Yeah. Okay, good.
So it was this, Josh, it was prepared, this thing is what we want you to discuss with us.
He can't see.
Oh, you can't see. It's a booklet that you guys gave us. Asset inventory and roadway conditions asset. That's what we want.
Yeah. Well, we can discuss that. We have a few slides from the last time. Obviously, the main one being the investment and the breakdown of the costs of each of the different assets. So yeah, we can get into that as a bunch. We're also looking at, we'll get to it, we'll look at the prioritization for your capital assets. And I look at, this is sort of built around sort of a risk assessment, and to look at how you go about looking at the different levels of risk and try to prioritize what the village should be looking at to do next. Cool. Okay, well, we'll get started then. So yeah, welcome. I have the second one here, is the breakdown of those asset dollars that I think was the big number from last time, where after after we went through and surveyed the town, we broke down the value of the infrastructure, looking at the roadways, culverts, water system, and sanitary, and this was the total value, estimated value of the in-ground assets. So in total, it was $52 million. So if you're going to break down on about a 40-year lifespan of all the assets, that would mean that Piscopee would invest $1.1 million a year to, at the end of 40 years, have replaced everything. But then we took into account some of the condition ratings. Now it's important to remember we don't have condition ratings of the water and sanitary, but we did look at the roadway infrastructure and tried to give that a condition rating. And because the roadways are deteriorating a little bit, that pushed up the approximate costs, the annual funding costs, to $2.2 million.
So Josh, why can't you do the sanitary sewer infrastructure? Why can't you give us that?
Sorry, say that again, Chris.
Yeah, the question from Lorraine was why, why can't we do the sanitary sewer infrastructure? I think I might be able to answer that one. It'd probably involve camera scoping almost every line in town in order to get us that. It'd be really time consuming and costly too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's correct.
You know, we have some of it through.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, just adding to that a little bit, we have a good bunch that's been camera scoped through various things. You know, something's come up, the line's blocked, or, you know, somebody complained, or we thought there might be a problem, we'd scope that portion of it. But to go actual street by street throughout the entire village.
But he has an estimate of how much it.
Yeah, and I think part of the work that they've done has sort of been based on that too, that, you know, a little bit of testing, sample camera scoping we've done has kind of given an idea what it might look like.
That's all I wanted to know.
Why do they have that little star or whatever it is after the 413,000? Okay, I can't read that.
It just says asset condition unknown, cost to be a 40-year replacement value, and that's the water. So looking at the sewer stuff we can actually scope if we wanted to, we're estimating it. The water stuff, you're really just guessing, because the water pipe, there's no real way to inspect it or actually camera scope it kind of thing.
You can do a leak detection on that, but again, that's a large cost for, maybe not the best return for your investment.
Yeah.
Just to an idea, unless you have a good idea that there's a leak occurring somewhere.
Yeah, and I think you and I had spoken previously too, Josh, with, you know, even that leak detection bit, when we do Dawson Creek water billing versus our usage, we're usually around the 10% mark. The difference between what Dawson bills us for and what we're seeing actually flows through the water meters in town. And we figure that's reasonable because we do use water for the fire hall, town hall here, for example, isn't metered, public works isn't metered. So it doesn't seem like there's a ton of water. You know, if we saw a really big number there, like 20-25% difference, oops, yeah, there might be a problem in the infrastructure where it's seeping out. But that little 10% number kind of tells us that for the most part, we think they're pretty good. They're not leaking.
Second. So the next question is, so how do we meet those that sort of investments? Do we? And there's a few possibilities. Are you either increase the revenues by increasing the tax base, which I'm sure Chris would be a fan of, or do you look at how to provide a service more cost effectively? To try to do the same level of service for less cost. Option 3 would be actually to reduce the level of service. So maybe Pouce doesn't need to pave all the roads, for instance. If they just wanted to provide gravel roads, that's a large cost savings with a less service. And then the last one, and sort of what this is built around, the understanding and managing the risk involved and prioritizing the investments a little better. So, back step, quick moment to go through just a brief on the asset management that we went through last time. What is asset management? And that, again, is the process of bringing together skills and people with the information that you collect to inform on the physical infrastructure and the resources, financial resources available from the city to try to come up with a plan to ensure long-term sustainable service delivery. I'm sure most of the words I used are in that slide there. So why do we want to do this asset management? Obviously to ensure that you can meet those service needs and that you can still economically and responsibly. So without depleting your capability of delivering to future generations to keep that your services going. And so we have to consider the community's priorities in doing that. How important is paved roads, for instance, versus water. And then also understand that there's trade-offs between the available capital and the services that you provide. I hope this is bells from the last time we went through everything. And then why asset management? Again, it's about the sustainable service. So making sure. Did I just go through all this? Yeah, here we go, the process. Sorry, my slides are not trying to be forward. So then in this little process wheel here, you can see that we have the acceptable process would be to assess the capacity and demand of your system, plan for what needs to be done, and doing that you look at the prioritization list, and then implement your priorities and try to plan capital expenditure that way. So step one would be to assess, which is what we tried to do last time. Was if your inventory in the ground and above ground. Try to assess the conditions. Now we didn't look at the water and sanitary, obviously, but we look at the level of service and then the risk involved. So that came when we were looking at the condition of your roads and culverts, everything that was visible above ground. So then plan, where we look at the policy and the strategy to allow the village to come up with like an actionable plan, or at least a series of steps that you could take to determine what your priorities are, and those can be included in an asset management plan, or something like and include things, a risk framework, and then integrate those into a long-term financial plan. Then you can implement. Right, so then using that asset management plan, you can implement those best practices, and then obviously the last important step is to measure how that performance, so that when you look at the next steps, make sure that the previous actions you've done are giving you the results you're looking for. So taking stock, the civil infrastructure in Quisquoby is getting a little older, but we're not 100% on the exact age of, especially your sanitary sewers. It's getting to the end of the useful life, and so you're stuck with a few decisions here on how to maintain and repair, and so that's why we're talking today. So we'll need to look at what your best course of action for investments in your capital infrastructure is moving forward. So yeah, so it's a balance between your capital management, so everything you're rehabilitating, replacing, completely abandoning, versus this program moving forward. So maintaining and operating would involve investigations into the capacity and condition of those infrastructure. So, like Chris said, videoing those cameras when appropriate, or videoing those sewers when appropriate, or doing a leak detection when we think there's a leak would be part of your asset management. So then some of the key questions that came up from I think the original asset management planning session that you guys had done years ago were determine what you have, which we've done now, and what's it worth. And so that was the $52 million price tag with all your in-ground infrastructure. So then half of this we've done. We have the condition and expected remaining service life. So we know the approximate condition of the roads and culverts, the condition of the water and sanitary. I think we don't have a rated condition like we do for the roads. But as Chris said, we videoed a bunch of the sewers. You have, just from anecdotal and replacements over time, you're getting to know the condition of your in-ground assets. So that's sort of where we are as far as checking the boxes here. So some of the things to look at would be to the level of service and service expectation and what needs to be done to maintain that. And so in doing that, you look at your priorities within the town and sort of what's at the top of your list as far as replacement or refurbishment. And so how can we ensure the long-term affordability by understanding and risk management is key to the prioritization. That's my quick rundown of the asset management, hopefully you remember from last time. Are there any questions at this moment?
Nope, good to go, Josh.
Sorry, say that again, Chris.
Yeah, good to go.
Okay, great. So, prioritization. So, well, the question that I guess I have for you guys is how does the village currently prioritize its capital expenditures and its replacements or paving? Or do you, is it just response to breakdowns?
Is that an open question or?
Yeah.
So right now, we've been sort of doing it as it happens. So as, you know, as a piece of sewer pipe fails, then we go in there and replace it and then look at that particular piece of pipe. Similarly with the roads, I mean, the streets are pretty easy. If it looks beat up and cracking and full of potholes, then we kind of been bringing it forward to council to replace that section of street. But even to that end, Josh, most of the street repairs have just been patches, right? So, you know, and in talking to the pavers, you know, those give you half as much life as it would if you dig it up and do the base and everything too, but they're half the cost at the same time. So,
yeah.
You know, and part of the struggle has been, you know, knowing that there's old pipes underground. You know, do we do that full build over, you know, a street without changing the pipes under the ground too? So it's
right.
Yeah.
Point of order?
Yeah, that's
I'd like a motion that we will carry the presentation past 15 minutes.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
okay.
So I think if I can maybe speak for council, part of what they were hoping to get today too, Josh, is out of that, you know, that $52 million question that you're talking about. How do we prioritize bits and pieces of that for maximum effect at the cheapest price?
Okay, perfect. Yes, so that's what the rest of this is kind of addressing. So that's when we'll talk about sort of how to prioritize. So there's the reactive approach, so responding to failures as they occur, which is reasonable, and obviously that's how you've been moving forward. The idea would be to transition to more of a proactive approach, to look at the consequences and the likelihood of a failure, and then assess and use that to assess the risk of this failure, and then use that risk assessment to determine what you're going to replace. So by implementing this risk framework, it should give council something that they can look at, follow a mathematical equation, say, yes, this risk is high enough that we want to replace this in the next year, next 2 years, and then you have a consistent approach to assessing which bits of your infrastructure you need to replace. It's not just the addition, it is that combination of consequence of it failing and the likelihood of failure to give you a risk determination. And we'll look at how we would do that in a minute. But that's essentially what I'm talking about when I say risk. It's that likelihood with the consequence. And then you can see on this little sliding scale, if you give it a 5 in likelihood of failure, if the consequence is low, maybe it's only a level 3 risk overall, and it might not be high in your to-do list. It'd be interesting. So I think you already know why we're assessing risk. I just went through it all. But yeah, that'll prioritize the limited resources you have. And again, as I said, it will ensure that everyone has a consistent definition of risk, so that when you're making that replacement decision, everyone's talking about the same thing when they discuss risk, and it'll allow you guys to have that the reasoning behind the replacement and that new investment. And yeah, it allows for open discussion as well. So the risk framework is what I was just discussed a little earlier. Look at the types of hazards, and that would be when looking at the consequence of failure. Look at the likelihood and the hazards that would affect the likelihood of failure to try to determine that risk assessment. And once you have those risk assessments, and decide what type of tolerance you're willing to accept, and be able to prioritize moving forward that way. And the language you'd be looking at, or when I say risk, you look at hazards or criticality, consequence, likelihood, risk register, treatment. All that is all just different acronyms for acronyms. It's homonyms, pseudonyms, other words for risk. So then, yeah, this is what we're talking about recently, the risk management process. So this is sort of what would be the good process to go through. So start by identifying hazards, even like climate change, for instance, would all be hazards that would affect the risk and maybe cause them to be a higher priority. Do your risk assessment, identify the root cause for the higher risk, and then identify actions to manage that risk. Maybe that's replacement, but maybe that's a monitoring program. Prioritize the actions, which is what we're talking about, and then implement those actions. So that's kind of the management process that we'd like to build towards.
Is this your schematic, or did you borrow this from somewhere?
This is something we created, but it comes from, oh gosh, I have to get back to you on that one. It came from elsewhere, but I think it was within Urban. But this risk management process started from, I think,
So you stole it from Sasha.
oh, did I?
No, we're looking at identifying the hazard, assess the risk, severity times probability. So the severity, say sewer pipes, the severity for all of them will pretty much be the same, but the probability is based on age and location. Then identify root cause. To identify the root cause, you're talking post-incident as opposed to pre-incident. So then we go to identify actions to manage the risks, which is cool, and then prioritize your actions and implement. Absolutely.
Yeah, but the identifying root causes would not necessarily be post-incident. If you are identifying a risk by a pipe that you know that is corroded, or a road that's coming apart, if you're able to identify the root cause beforehand, be it poor installation, let's say.
Well, that's your probability, and that's in your risk assessment when you assess the risk.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't catch that.
I would argue that would be part of your risk assessment, whereas the severity times probability, and your probability based on a number of factors. Continue. That's okay. Keep going. You're doing good.
All right, sorry.
I think something also with the severity, and a sewer spill is a sewer spill, but what we're trying to differentiate here is your line down to the sewage treatment plant is a higher consequence if it's a failure than, you know, a dead end road somewhere. So we're ranking, like, if all the sewer lines are going to fail,
absolutely,
which one do you choose to do first?
Good point.
Because of the consequence of it failing, you know, not just the actual physical consequence, but what it does to your system.
Okay.
Hence the pipe.
Yeah. And say some of the hazards that we might look at as part of a risk framework would be the hazard. So a condition failure would be one of the conditions examined. Capacity failure, maybe a pipe isn't large enough or the system's just grown beyond the size. Physical failure. Others would be, actually here, the next page is a little better. Others would be something like climate change I mentioned earlier, or inadequate design and construction. Those would be if you're aware that there's inadequate construction or you know you have capacity issues. Those would be the hazards that you're trying to identify ahead of time. Here we go. So the types of hazards, assess the risk, which would be defining the consequences and likelihood, and then which is a risk tolerance, which you can look at the level of service and what risk you're, the way to prioritize. This is the same thing before and a different thing. You can see how changing likelihood would change the overall risk assessment. So this is the example of some of the risks that something like an earthquake, really low likelihood, but a high consequence. The risk score might only be 5 because when is an earthquake ever going to happen? Who's could be? But something different like premature failure, that is likely, and if you can determine the root cause, like poor construction, that will inform the risk and maybe put something higher up on your prioritization. Because the consequence of something failing would be fairly high, and the likelihood, because of that poor construction, would be medium to high. That's kind of the idea of balancing consequence and likelihood. So finding the consequences of failure is sort of the next step, depending on the type of consequence. So obviously there's financial consequences, the cost to restore the service, but also the third-party liability if it's going to affect something, possibly cause a lawsuit or something along those lines. There's a social consequence, which is the service interruptions, but also any impacts to public safety, health and safety. And of course, environmental consequences if you have some kind of sewage spill or something along those lines. The consequences of failure, which would in fact affect the risk analysis. So then, for road classification, one of the ways that you can determine the consequence rating would be to look at the type of road and the cost to replace it. So if it's just if it's insignificant, you maybe give it a score of 1, and that's in something that's it doesn't impact too many people downstream. This is pretty self-explanatory. If it's an arterial road and it costs $50,000, more than $50,000 to restore, the consequence would be severe, and you give it a high rating. And if it's not, if it's some back alleyway, then maybe the rating's much lower, and it's not going to affect it. You're not going to necessarily prioritize that as high as you would, a major artery through Booscoopy. So that's the likelihood of the consequences. The likelihood of here. There's a few things. You could do it on a condition rating, and we tried to do that with the roads, giving something poor, fair, good, very good, excellent type rating. But you can also look at it based on the age of the asset, if you happen to know the age, and then try to assign a likelihood of failure score based on the condition or the age. So this is what we tried to do with the roadways here, trying to break up essentially just change the poor condition to something that's going to be replaced in 1 year, fair condition that would be in 1 to 3, and so on. So these do not take into account the classification of the road, for instance, or the consequence of failure. So this is just the likelihood of failure. And that's when we're looking at, it looks like 10% of the paved roads in Pooskoopi were given that poor classification, and so on and so forth. The same thing, same goes with the gravel road. We have about 15% of the road were given poor, but this doesn't take into account the consequence of failure. And just because something's in poor condition doesn't mean that would be the top of your priority list.
Not having paved streets ain't gonna bring residents out here either.
So then an example of this risk assessment, I'm not sure how big this is or if you can read it, but it's okay. It's a nice snapshot that you can see sort of from 1,000 feet. That if you're looking at, so this is for a water line. If you're looking at, start by looking at the consequence of failure. The first question that this example would do, would ask if the pipe's in a roadway or not. It's not a road, immediately it assigns the value of 1. Because if the pipe's not in the roadway, it means replacement is fairly simple. It gives it the consequence failure of 1. Maybe that's a little different if it's, one of the questions are, if there are any factors other factors that you need to consider. Maybe one of those are if it's the main line into the city and it feeds the entire village. Maybe you don't care whether it is or isn't in a road, if it needs to be replaced, it needs to be replaced immediately. And then the consequence factor would go up to a 5, let's say. But otherwise, if it's not in a roadway, you're not too worried about it. You classify the consequence of failure as a 1. And then you look at the likelihood of failure. So, the first question, any asset-specific upgrade actions known? So, if you, I can't think these, you can do the specific action needed to be taken to upgrade that asset. You could do those, and that would affect you could just do those actions immediately. Otherwise, the likelihood you can then determine based on its age or its classification, its condition. You could give that a 1 to 5 rating to give you an overall rating of your risk score. And use that overall risk score to start ranking your priorities. Does that make sense to everyone?
It would be nice if we had a copy of your presentation to follow as well.
Can we get a copy of this after, Josh?
I can absolutely send you a copy of that.
Okay.
Yeah,
There was questions.
for sure. So then, yeah, you can have a look at that and that's the breakdown of everything. And then once you have the risk scores and your prioritization, you can look at the root cause, and this is an important part of the process, which to look at, if you know there's a main break and you know that it's because of conditions, you want to know the why of it so that you can try to get in front of a future failure. And know if the next pipe in the system is going to break for what reason. So some of the things you can do is like additional assessments if necessary, and then prioritizing your capital projects or other operational programs like exercising valves, for instance, to make sure that your assets in the ground stay operational for longer. And of course, there's always the do nothing option, which is to run to failure and then replace as they fail, which is completely understandable. We would like to try to be a little more proactive. So, something like this is the idea of how your actions will impact the risk. If you're going to do a capital replacement and rip out an entire road, replace all the pipes and roads, that'll change the likelihood of failure, but the consequence will stay. So you'll move into a different risk. Let's say you move it from a red to a yellow perhaps, but the consequence of that asset failing stays largely the same because it's the same piece of infrastructure. So the question is, what do you do if you have all the prioritization and risk scores, the high ones in red here? You know the green ones are good, and where do you draw the line between red and yellow? And that's where you're looking at your priorities and what sort of level of risk do you see as a replace now versus replace 10 years in the future? That's the question. So yeah, look at for your prioritization, how much will that actually reduce the risk? And yeah, how will the risk change? That's a big one. Is how will the risk change over time if nothing is done? If the pavement has failed, will that really risk? How much does the risk change by leaving that to completely fall apart? When it comes to asphalt, it's not usually not that high of a risk. We were talking about in-ground infrastructure. Yeah, and sometimes you want to get ahead of those things rather than run to failure. And yeah, look at the available funding resources and try to plan appropriately. And then you want to break this into a capital plan or an operations plan to move forward. Then, what is your risk tolerance? If you're looking at a breakdown of green to red, what is the tolerance that Kuskupi is going to accept? And what are the other drivers that are for your investment in capital operational plans? So in making good decisions, we want to understand the service, which I think we do, understand the risk, which is the next step, understanding the cost, which is what we've been through now. We know the cost of the infrastructure in Kuskupi to allow you guys to make the best decisions. So then if we circle back to the Kuskupi's in-ground infrastructure, this is what we use to define the cost of your infrastructure. Just unit rates based on the length and the data to determine the current placement cost. And then for the things that we didn't have a condition on, we just divided that replacement value by 40 years, the expected lifespan, year depreciation cost, which brings us down to this $52 million breakdown.
Hey, Josh? Yeah, we might have to wrap this up. We got the auditors waiting to do their presentation too, so.
Okay, well this is the end, this is the questions period. So this is the breakdown of the road, water, sanitary, and this was the different condition ratings which you've already seen in the previous presentation. And it brings us to this investment page. So the final thing is that, do you need to invest $2.2 million over the next each year for the next 10 years? In a perfect world, yes, but we don't live there. I don't live there. Well, if you have $2 million in your back pocket, would be great. So then try to look at the prioritization and break down and look at what is the road in Kuskupi that is the highest on the priority, and then replace everything and try to do so as economically possible.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the rundown on risk. I know we're running out of time. Sure, do you have anything to add at this point?
I think council should have a meeting so that we make a wish list. We're going through this, we're paying for this. We should actually have a list what our priorities are. And when we bring our budget up, or we start looking at our budget every year, we should be looking at that list to see what we're moving up, what we're doing, how everything is, so that it's all noted that we've looked at this on a yearly basis.
Well, thank you for your presentation.
You can't hear us first.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I speak, you can't hear me.
Yeah, just send me the PowerPoint here, please, Josh.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard Barb's comments, but it was that basically we should have a dedicated meeting to have the council discuss and set the priorities. I think we can use some of those wheels that you guys provided about the percent of infrastructure in various categories. And I know we should look at the map you guys gave us with the road surface classifications there too, and start to build some of that into the budget as well. So.
Perfect. I'd love to. Okay, maybe we'll touch base tomorrow, Chris, and I'd love to go through it with you. It'd be great.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Okay.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, you guys. Bye.
Bye. Okay. 7, unfinished business arising from the minutes. 7.1, Norman's email. You get a second? Discussion?
Yes. I don't really quite, they didn't give us an answer back, it's just on hold. Is that the way that everybody's looking at it?
No. Because it says, therefore, whatever consensus they agree upon will be focused in not letting the property pass another year without cleaning it.
Perfect. That's our
That's
main
all
goal,
it
is to get it clean.
Yes.
That was our main objective.
That's right, and I don't want to be financially committed in any way until we find out what our future is.
Okay. So all in favor? 8 points.
What are we in favor of? What was the motion?
Well,
To accept.
information.
Just for information,
Well-
and then we will keep this, what was that?
Just a note, because it's prevalent to this letter, is I'm of the understanding that our offer to purchase was withdrawn on the 16th.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
So, yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Just for clarification, yeah, council had given them up until the 15th to accept that offer, and the letter stated that after that, you know, we'd be looking at the remedial action legal process. Is that council's desire now, or do we just kind of leave it in limbo? And
I think we should leave it in limbo until we give them, I don't know, 3 months? At least the summer.
Until
Cleaned up.
the COVID thing is sort of a plan, and it may not be the plan that to go back to what was previous, but if everything's open and meetings can go ahead, then from that time, maybe we would pursue more answers.
So 3 months?
Up to you guys. Yeah.
And we'll revisit.
Yeah. So we're gonna-
Okay.
Okay, very good.
Okay,
Let's,
Can I have a second round?
This could be very well an artful attempt at just delay, which is a continuation of the process which we've had right from the beginning.
But
I know. But with this COVID thing, there's not much we can do.
So we just had a meeting, right? Business is occurring over video, different
Ways.
ways of communicating is available.
Yeah, it is available to them too.
So, you know,
So what do you want to put on the table?
what you want to do is say, let's give them another 3 months, and then we'll stop and see where we're at that time and make a decision from there. So you give them all this time, plus an additional 3 minutes before, or 3 months, before we even consider what we're gonna do. Yes. Well, it's not up to me to recognize you.
My thoughts is when there is a fire and insurance is involved, it is a long process.
That process is
And this
finished.
has been,
There's no insurance anymore.
That's finished.
That's
done.
and they told you that? In a written letter?
Yeah.
You have it in writing?
There was an email indicating that, you know, they'd, I forget exactly how it was worded, Councilor Hebert, but yeah, you know, and then there was a subsequent email from Isaac saying, from the executive director, saying he was looking for other funding sources in Vancouver, so, and that was
What is our legal right to say, all right, in 3 months' time, say, all right, we have been very good, we've given you almost a year and a half. We would like to see your plan on the cleanup, otherwise, as of October 31st, we will start finding them.
Marty?
I think a major fire, that size, that building, and we know that it is going to be a very costly cleanup, that you can't expect people to pick from wherever. I mean, they're scrambling, Vancouver, wherever, trying to look for monies to clean that up. If it ends up in the courts, I mean, the courts aren't.
We're not liable if somebody gets in there.
Exactly. I mean,
We're not liable for environment.
Exactly. I don't think that
We're
we
liable
should
in any
be
way, shape, or form.
worried about this until next year.
It's just we have businesses complaining about it, Ryan, is the only thing, right?
Yeah, one business that's complained about
These
it.
taxes.
Yeah, I realize that, but I mean, we're a small village. And yes, we can ask somebody to clean it up. And yes, you can try.
And the cost to get
So,
legal advice.
What's the message you're sending here to another local business in exactly the same boat? We went and put our foot down and said, clean it up,
Clean it up.
or
yeah.
we're taking action. And now because if someone happens to belong to a certain identity, whatever, we're not going to do it to them because we're afraid of repercussions?
No,
Or we're
that's
afraid of
not
looking bad?
reason. No.
Well, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. We gotta be consistent. We can't pick and choose who we apply the law to. I mean,
But we
and
do have
if you
to look
don't,
at
and if you don't
individual
do that,
cases.
that's where you create a two-tier system.
Okay, so make a motion.
Here's one on the floor already.
Discussion, Chris?
Thanks for, just for council's info too, I mean, the previous motion here was to leave it for 3 months and revisit. The legal remedial action process through the Local Government Act and the Community Charter is also a multi-month process. So that's not motion and things start happening. There's a series of letters and consultations and so on and so forth that have to happen through the lawyers, you know, even to engage in that process. So delaying, you know, or saying today that, well, okay, it'll be 3 months before we decide to do anything, we're effectively pushing any actual tangible action on the property out into September, October, November.
So what do you recommend?
We've essentially lost it. This one's a highly politicized.
And it's also very costly every time you lift up the phone to reach out to your lawyer
Yeah.
for us to take action or to implement anything, where if we put it on hold.
I hear, you know, a lot of what Councillor Drover's saying too is, you know, we had another fire that happened within a couple of weeks after this last one. We issued that landowner a couple of letters, longtime business owner in town, he had it cleaned up within a couple of weeks of us talking to him. This is simply a disaster site. Yes, there's some dollars attached, but, you know, if that job were ours, I could have that property cleaned up in 2 months. And we're here a year and a half now, you know, down the road.
I've heard the arguments from this council, right, that we should have sidewalks going across, build new sidewalks, because there's a possibility of a child getting hit while walking to school in the morning. What is the likelihood of that happening versus likelihood of a child getting injured over here in this building?
Actually, they're taking the garbage out of there and they're taking it down over the bank and smashing them. There's what, 10 TVs down?
So they're getting in there.
Oh yeah, there's a big screen TV that has the glass all pushed out of it, smashed out of it, laying down there with me and Chris were today. Running.
So, that private property that we're talking about, when those children go on there, or whomever they are, and are doing this kind of stuff, is it the village's responsibility to ensure that they're not going on that property, or is it the
landowners?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whose responsibility it is. The end result is you got a child injured. That shouldn't be.
Chris?
Yeah, and both of those points are correct. We've done our due diligence with respect to that property by demanding that the owner have it fenced. So the liability is on them. However, you're correct. The ethical, you know, ethically, yeah, if a child gets hurt, are we legally liable? I don't believe so. But
we don't want to take that chance.
You know, yeah. Do we want to take that chance?
Is that property fenced?
It is. Not the property, Councillor Hebert. The actual structure is fenced 360 degrees around it.
But the gates are down.
Yep, the gates are down, and I specifically asked
the
owner to make sure that it was small scale fence. So originally when they fenced it, it was large openings that you could, even an adult could easily pass through. So they switched that to small little things now, so the child literally has to climb up and over it if they want to get in.
But if they wanted to, they could go down by the old hospital and go down in.
It's just a temporary fence. Where there's a will, there's a way, Your Worship. There's no, you know, so it.
Well, you know, I can remember being a child and I knew what dangerous was, and by golly, by gosh, I wasn't going to do that. I mean, we have to give children at least.
Now I'm thinking of all the kids eating Tide Pods. Let's compare apples to apples.
Should we reply back with a reminder that their liability, and it is.
They're aware of that.
They're aware of it, and we did our due diligence?
Exactly.
We did our due diligence when the pipe broke.
Listen, I say we go ahead with legal and start the process, because it's going to take months to get to wherever it has to go.
Okay, that's your motion on the
That
floor?
is my motion.
Second.
I'll second that one.
Discussion.
I don't agree with that.
Okay?
You're opposed?
Anyway.
All in favor? Okay.
I would like it noted that I'm opposed.
Councillor Hebert, are you opposed as well?
Yes, I am.
We're the bad thing.
Do you want it noted too?
Yes, you did.
No, do you want your name as opposed in the minutes?
Yeah, sure.
New business, 8.1 recommendation. That council hear the report given by Saunders, Rose, Bone, and Grindle. Saunders will be
No.
Barb, you don't have to move. Barb, you don't have to move.
It's all her fault.
It's a phone.
I keep thinking that.
Hi Jared, it's Sandy at Coops.
Hey, how are you?
You're up. You're good.
Hello. Jaron Neufeld, and I'm the partner on the Village of Coos Coopie's financial statement audit. To start out with, this year was a bit of a different audit with COVID and everything going on, and so do want to extend a big thanks to Chris and the team there for all of their help and making the audit go as smoothly as you could imagine being possible with all the restrictions and requirements around social distancing and being able to see source documents and whatnot. Do a really great job. So thanks to you guys there. So my understanding is you guys have a set of our financial statements in front of you. So if you turn to page 2, you'll see our independent auditor's report. It's addressed to the mayor and council of the corporation of the Village of Coos Coopie. Based on we've audited the financial statements of the
Jared,
corporation.
can I just stop you there for a minute? They're not in our package.
Oh, they're not? Okay.
No.
On page 2 of the financial statements, you have our auditor's report. It states that we audited the financial statements of the corporation of the Village of Coos Coopie, which comprises the statement of financial position as of December 31st, 2019, and the statement of operations and accumulated surplus, changes in net financial assets and cash flows for the year that ended, and notes to the financial statements, including a summary of significant accounting policies. In our opinion, the company financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the village as at December 31st, 2019, and the results of its operations and cash flows for the year that ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. As auditors, we conducted our audit in accordance with Canadian generally accepted auditing standards, and management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of financial statements in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. As auditors are directed to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements as a whole are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error. As auditors, we also exercise professional judgment and maintain professional skepticism throughout the audit. We also identify and assess the risks of a material misstatement of the financial statement. We obtain an understanding of internal controls relevant to the audit in order to design audit procedures. We evaluate the appropriateness of accounting policies used. We conclude on the appropriateness of management's use of the going concern basis. We evaluate on the overall presentation, structure, and content of the financial statements, and we communicate with those charged with governance regarding, among other matters, the plan, scope, and timing of the audit, significant audit findings, and any significant deficiencies in internal control that we may identify during our audit. So, at the end of all of that, it is a clean auditor's report, so nothing serious or anything that would change our opinion over the financial statements of the Village of Coos Coopie.
So they were excellent again, hey, Jared?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Any questions?
No, I'm good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared.
Excellent, thanks guys, take care.
Yeah, you too.
You too, stay safe.
You too, bye.
They were the last meeting.
Oh, I know they were, but if they have a delegation, they should have been on the one.
He didn't send us the finals, the non-draft copy.
Yeah, he didn't send it to us before this meeting.
Well, you guys should have followed that up. 8.2 recommendation.
The council received a request to plant seeds from the students of the Coos Coopie Elementary, grades 2, 3 for discussion.
I love these last.
Santa seeds.
When are we gonna plant them? And
That's due pretty soon.
Yes.
so, do we have them here?
Yes.
Can I speak?
Yes, sure, let's do. So, the seeds have been planted. They were planted today.
Nice.
Oh. Ms. Rob knows. She had a Zoom call with her students, because you guys approved this last meeting.
Yes.
We were gonna plant them though. They are planted.
No, we were.
Oh, you were going, well, the fire department planted them.
Okay.
Because the school requested that they be planted right in front of the village office. We didn't have a planter. So we asked the fire department if they would share, and the fire department proudly planted them for us amongst the flowers. This is a little book that we compiled of the letters that the students sent in. I didn't want to put them all in there. There was only one in at the time of this. So these are the letters that came in
Very nice.
since the agenda's been printed.
And tomorrow, Ms. Rob is gonna tell her students that council approved the planting of the seeds and that they can go see them. And there will be a poster in the planter that you gave us saying that their seeds are there.
Send them a reply back from all of us
They
saying,
need a reply.
yeah, so they can all read it
Yes.
and Sandy can color it.
You will do
Sandy
that?
can color it, can't you?
I think Mrs.
I know.
Robb and her students are awesome.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Round of applause for that.
Very good.
And we would like a school picture of them standing in front of there, if that's ever possible.
With the flowers in it.
Might not be possible till next year, but.
We might have to stand around there with the flowers and send it to them in September.
Well, that's a nice idea too.
If there's no freeze. Alright. 8.3 recommendation?
The council approved the library board appointments as outlined in the attached letter.
Second,
Discussion?
I make a motion that we appoint
Are these older, like,
following
Most of
to,
them are all the same people.
yeah? Done?
Most of them all just the same people.
Okay.
and
All in favor?
don't we need a second for the motion that I said?
Should just be.
No.
All in favor? 8.4 recommendation.
And council received a report on the backyard chickens for discussion.
The second.
Discussion.
Do we have a ticketing bylaw? How would we enforce fines or whatever?
Most of the fines for the various bylaws, Councilor Smith, are all inside the bylaw itself. So,
That doesn't. Okay, how does our bylaw officer collect a bylaw infraction, a ticket? If he issues, because he would have to issue a ticket, and how does he enforce that?
so he doesn't collect, the person who gets the ticket would have to come into town hall and square up with that, yeah.
Yes, and if he doesn't, how do we enforce it?
I like the
Same way the dog.
permit.
Sandy?
So in the report, I addressed the bylaws that will need to be addressed. One of them is the animal control and licensing bylaw. We do not have anything in there for chickens right now, so we would have to change that. At the same time, that is when we would implement the fees and fines associated with the chicken, the same way we have for cats and dogs.
And have we reached out to our residents to ask those that are opposed? Because I have been contacted about someone that opposes. And,
They need to do a petition, it says here?
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Cindy.
So you asked us to look up some of these things. So one of the ideas that I came up with, because a mail drop isn't really feasible because it goes to everybody else, but what if we asked the people who wanted the chickens to present a petition with X number of signatures and addresses so that we can confirm that these people actually live?
Owners of the property,
Yeah,
not renters, owners of the property.
and then that would have to be presented to council, and once you found out how many signatures you have, then you could decide yes or no.
yeah, and if they
That was
go
just one
and
option.
knock on doors, then they're gonna find out the people that are not happy with it.
Right?
Isn't that difficult at this time?
Exactly. Well, I don't think we can look at it at this time till next year.
Could we knock on the door and stand 10 feet back and ask them if they would want to sign a petition? Carry their hands, sanitizers, like everybody else does. But
Yeah, thanks for, and at the end of the day too, I don't think this would be a staff file, like Sandy mentioned, it would be.
No, it would be
you
the
know,
person
some
that's-
resident
one of these
something
residents
wants
that
to
are-
spearhead it from the community to go around and get those signatures and those names and that input, it's
and what is the amount of names that have to be on it? 100? I thought?
entirely up to you guys,
I thought it was 100.
You
yeah.
guys would set it.
Yeah, you guys can set it. It's more of an informal referendum, really, and it's,
Oh, I know what a.
it's there, yeah, once we
But
go
if they
referendum.
sign that, and if they accomplish, do we have to follow through?
No. If it's a formal referendum, we do, once it meets, the certain percentage, I forget what that is off the top of my head. But if it's just a petition or a general survey to gather names of people that would be interested, then,
But it has to be their signature, their name, their address, their phone number,
Yep, yeah.
like an actual petition.
Yeah.
Not say residents of Dawson Creek.
Yeah.
Exactly, or outlying areas, right? Okay, you got that, Fanny? Tony?
Thoughts about chickens. Now, this morning I was watching CBC and they have said that 60 million people in the world will be pushed into poverty because of COVID-19. Businesses are struggling, people are losing jobs, we are in a recession. It's going to look pretty bleak for a while. These are just chickens.
Why don't
and
they go
maybe-
buy dozen eggs organic from some of our local farmers who are struggling and not?
We had the same conversation at the last council meeting.
Yes.
Let's just approve this.
I'm in for the permit though, to draft a permit.
Yeah, drop the permit, do what exactly this says here.
Yeah.
Okay. Chris?
I think if there's one piece of this, your worship, that's maybe up, is the community engagement piece. I think Councillor Drover touched on it at the last meeting where this was discussed. It is absolutely fully within council's discretion to yay or nay this and move forward with it.
Exactly, but you know what, if they're gonna take the time and go door to door and ask people if they think that they should have chickens, we should actually give them the time of day and say, yes, I appreciate your guys' effort.
What kind of precedents are we setting here for every decision that council has to make? Well, wait, let's go and have a referendum, we'll go door to
No, it's
door.
not referendum, they can get a petition.
This is
It's very
ridiculous,
costly,
this is the
Ken.
third
It's a
meeting.
lot of work. Our staff has to.
Listen, did you read the report from our animal control officer?
Yes.
How many reports were pertaining to chickens? Tell me,
Supposedly.
There was one.
one or two?
And we don't have chickens at all.
No,
At
we
least
hasn't
two.
found the house yet.
But it had to have been investigated, so who pays for that?
That's what I'm saying. Do we add more to our bylaw office?
He's already doing it.
But he would have to do it with a vehicle, garbage.
He gets paid for it.
Okay. But it's more work. It's more, our staff is doing the rezoning of the bylaws, that takes time.
I did notice the CAO did make reference to it could be costing an additional cost factor with regards to this. People. How many people in town are gonna take you up and having chickens?
Probably about 5 or 6.
It's not that, it's the maintenance and the check afterwards. My dog gets out and gets in their fence, kills their chickens, they run to the village office. The
Put it on
office.
Facebook, they don't call them.
Oh, pardon.
Yeah, we'll read about it on Facebook.
Yeah, you know, it's
Oh, you
40
need to-
below.
Oh,
My chickens are
Entertaining.
freezing.
You know, let's take a look at Gold Rush, right? Because you have this operation that's happening up there, and then there's all kinds of problems that interject itself into the operation. And all I know is it's great TV, right? The TV is there, people are tuning in. So we could do a Poos Koopy channel focusing on chickens of Poos Koopy. And then we can have the dog running through the fence and grabbing the chicken, and then the neighbors fighting with each other and having it on Poos Koopy, and it could be a pay-per-view channel. Come on, people, it's chickens.
But you have to license your dog, so you have to license your chicken.
With a name tag.
Just picture the little collars.
No, they're girls, not boys.
Thanks, Your Worship. There's no doubt there's a little bit of administrative background work with this. The longest piece of it is actually going to be any amendments to the zoning bylaw. Because zoning bylaws have some community charter requirements for public consultation and that type of thing.
There's no,
Yeah.
the only one that really needs it's the animal control.
Yeah. but we wanted to do some stuff to zoning anyways with respect to C-cans and a few other things, so we can actually lump it. I mean, it was in the capital plan to do some work on the zoning bylaw anyhow, so. Yeah, it's not tons of work for us to get this through, it's just, you know, whether or not you guys want us to
Well,
do the
these
community
residents want
consensus.
chickens, so we gotta do something for them. We can't just say, go to hell.
Yeah.
You can't, you can't. These are taxpayers that want chickens, so we have to make it as easy as possible for them to have the chickens.
And at the end of the day, you know, those are the kinds of decisions you guys are elected to make. Community comes up with an idea, brings it to council.
I make the petition just to know how many people actually would like the chickens. I would like just to see, and if they wanna do all that work to get that, hey, why not?
Then we know they're serious.
Yes, they're serious. They're not gonna just be run down coops.
Is that a motion?
Yes,
Second?
I'll second.
Ken should second, he's the chicken lover.
So,
Petition?
just so I'm clear, we'll hold off on starting to draft any of this stuff until we
We'll
make
get a
sure.
petition. Okay. All in favor?
Did we send a letter to this Jessica?
Yes. Chris, you're opposed? We sent a letter to Jessica regarding that.
I didn't raise my hand, so I'm going with the majority.
Okay.
Okay, Jessica.
Is that okay, Ken?
Oh, yeah, John. They don't know what to say. Third consecutive meeting, we can't come to a decision on chickens,
There's
whether
no-
it's yes or no. It's like,
Well, I said last time I said I was on the fence about it.
yes,
But
you
if
did.
she's going to do the work to show that we,
If who's going to do it?
Jessica,
Also, now you've designated someone.
no, Jessica,
She's the one that
or
brought the thing to the.
or Danielle Beach, or,
Did she offer to go do a referendum with the town?
no, but she put it on Facebook. She
okay.
calls the
She had a poll on Facebook, yes, she did. Was that her?
Danielle Beach.
Yeah, so we've already got our opinion poll. Let's sift through the names and see who's from Hoops.
There's 5.
Well, there you go. How many against?
Lots.
On that poll? Well, then go with simple majority. Get up, make a decision. Right? The road is paved with squirrels that couldn't make a decision.
That live in the village.
Make a decision.
I wanna know who wants chickens in the village.
You said 5.
There was 5 on that poll. A lot of people don't have internet. Marlene doesn't have Facebook.
Exactly, how do I know?
I'll give you an answer. We'll build a doghouse, a chicken coop to look like a doghouse, and I'll smuggle you with chicken.
I know there's 3 people up in Oaksville that don't have Facebook, so maybe they want you.
So, Ken's smuggling chicken and egg operation. Phone number, I will smuggle you a chicken, I will smuggle you 2 eggs every morning.
And Ken, they'll get a farm.
For the people. Oh my goodness. Make a decision. What? This is like 2
I'll make a
months
decision.
down the road.
No.
Yes or no?
She could go tomorrow, do the petition. And have it here the next meeting.
And so it does make a difference, because if you decide you have chickens, first you have to build a chicken coop and then a chicken house.
Yes.
Then you have to know, are you going to buy a mature hen, or are you gonna buy a hatchling? And then,
You can do
And then it's
hatchlings.
gonna be a guest or
sorry.
I don't think you can do hatchlings right now.
Mhm. Yeah, you betcha, but it's gonna take 12 weeks before they start to mature.
Yes.
So then the summer is over. And what are you gonna do? Put it in the freezer? You might get 1 egg out of it.
Are you done?
Yes,
Okay.
just make a decision.
Well, just did, you did a petition. Oh, they're all done. Grandstand there, Ken?
Yep.
Okay, you're already done now with your grandstand. Okay,
$2.99
8.5, recommendation.
Council discussed what they would like to do for the graduates of East Cookie.
Second.
Sandy,
Yes, ma'am? Your Honor?
have you got any,
Okay, so I spoke to
Crystal?
the electoral area manager. And she advised me that the director asked her to come up with some ideas about mementos that we could get to the graduates. not necessarily a banner.
Okay.
In the process of talking to her, the following hour, I received an email from Legacy Signs stating that they are doing the grad banners for all of Dawson graduates, which includes Poofs and whoever else. So they are suggesting that you can sponsor a banner if you like, or 2 or 3 or whatever. So from the PRRD, I got that they would like to work on some kind of memento. Apparently Director Hebert was talking about a certificate that could be sent to them in honor. If we want them to be mailed out with their graduation certificate and stuff, we have to have everything to the school by June 2nd. Because that's all gonna, no. Next week is, we got 1 week.
Yeah.
You would have to decide if you wanted to, some of the ideas we came up with here was a pen maybe that just said graduation 2020 or a keychain, and we could just send that to the school and they could send that out with the Pooskupi graduate stuff that they're going to be sending out. Sorry?
They'll lose a pen.
But then there's also, you could sponsor the banner.
Well, we'll just do whatever Leonard does. I'm good with that.
Well, no, they asked me to ask you.
Yeah,
And whatever
so-
you guys do, I gotta take that back to
Well,
the
then why don't we
PRD.
just do to Legacy then? If we all just
So,
go in.
do you
with
want us
Legacy.
to find out how many Pooskupi graduates there are and then just make a
Yes.
donation in that amount?
Well, Leonard will do area D.
Yeah, but, so we will find out.
Yeah.
Okay, can I have a motion for
I'll
that?
make a motion that you get in touch with the school to find out how many kids are from the Bruce.
No, that's not the motion.
What's the motion? What is the
The
motion?
motion to be, would be to
And then,
find out how many graduates we are and then make a donation
I was getting
to
it.
Legacy. Okay, second? No, no second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Imagine there's that many from
All in favor? All of us are okay.
I was just wondering if we had to do a referendum.
I was waiting for you to say that.
8.6 recommendation.
The council received a letter from Community Futures for discussion.
Seconder,
Second.
discussion.
I'm in favor.
Pardon?
I make the motion that we send a letter of support
For what?
for the application for another person to help in the office.
Nice. Letter of support.
Second? Seconder?
Second.
All in favor? Sure. Anybody see anything on correspondence? Tell our bylaw officer he's doing a good job, Chris.
Yes, nice
Keep
report.
it up. Keep up his job.
So what about the skate park now? Are we gonna discuss that later or?
You can do that in your report.
So this is all received for info?
Okay. Resolution, bylaws, non-administration, Chris's Sierra report. Is attached. Is attached. Everybody's got his hand up.
Yep, thank you, Worship. Just a couple of things here. I was just emailing the auditors back and forth, so I do have to apologize to council. They were attached to an email yesterday morning. I replied to it. I didn't see the attachment, so that one's on me. But I'll bring it back to council here for the next meeting. So. But yeah.
We reviewed them. They
Yeah,
didn't
the
change
same,
them,
the
so-
same one, yeah, there was no changes from the
Yeah.
drafts that you guys approved.
But I have to
at the
sign.
previous meeting.
What about number 2?
I figured somebody'd ask about number 2.
Do the first one first, George.
Yeah,
Do the
oh, yeah.
addition first.
Okay,
Then
so,
go to that.
yeah, Sandy's asking, reopening, so we sent out an email there last week about the skate park and some of the other parks, got some replies, enough to form a consensus, but, you know, so it's kind of loosely been done, but we also have to discuss the reopening of town hall here too, because the closing of town hall was a council motion. I think it should be council that.
I think it should be open. I'm fine with that. You guys got glass, you guys got masks, you guys got,
We're still waiting on a few safety items, some more masks. I think we're short some hand sanitizer maybe, and long story short, if council's okay with that, rather than picking a firm date, just sort of pushing it back to us,
Monday.
that once it's ready, you know, when we have all the required
When you get
pieces.
the safety
Oodles of hand sanitizer.
Oodles of hand sanitizer. We've also got a WCB requirement that came across late last week or early this week, where we have to put together a pen, the
but we
reopening
talked
plan.
today about Monday. What,
We think we'll be ready for Monday, your worship, but if we're not, we don't want to have to go against the council motion. So,
no,
you
it
know,
has to be when you guys are safe
yeah.
to be able to open.
So, yeah, so if you guys can maybe just direct us to open once we're ready to go, we've got the WCD plan in place and all of the safety equipment, then that's good. We'll get it done as soon as.
Okay, I made that motion.
Yeah.
I said I was seconded.
Okay.
Discussion.
Barb seconded.
As far as the parks go, the reopening of the parks is pretty easy with the exception of the play structures. So do we want to leave those taped off and cordoned off?
Yes.
Because we don't see any reasonable way to disinfect them. However, I will let you know, on a conference call earlier this week, it turns out there was no provincial directive to close parks. Every municipality just seemed to be following what the other ones were doing and
Fort St. John.
closing parks. Fort St. John didn't close any of those. And so the BC Provincial Health Officer, Dr. Kling, said that they're not sure, you know, what the contamination on play structures is and so on and so forth. And her language was it's up to each municipality to decide what they want to do with parks and.
But then we read today that touching, it's not spraying as easy. So.
Well,
Yeah, and how would you know if a kid was in there or?
yeah.
Yeah, but
Grab on
like the
monkey bars or
skateboard
whatever.
park is,
The skateboard park's pretty easy, right?
Yeah,
Because
and
the kids
park-
aren't touching, they're not climbing, they're on their own device, bike, scooter, or whatever that may be, you know, so. Worst case scenario, they fall and they touch the ground, but that's about it. It's bare concrete. I wouldn't imagine something.
There's still those railings though on that skateboard.
Yeah, that's true too.
Grab.
Yeah, so there is potentially services, but definitely not to the extent that a play structure is.
No, I don't think the play structure should be open till it's like 30th Bob for like 2 weeks.
Or we could leave the play structures closed indefinitely until we hear something different from one of the health officers. But they're your facilities, guys, so it's balls entirely into your court as to how you want us to reopen.
fine.
Well, I hate to have some young parent have their child get sick and then come after us for not having clean structures.
But it's, like if someone gets the flu and they go there to the park. Is it the
This
same?
is different, right?
No, they're claiming it's not. CDC is claiming what?
Can I ask what the school's doing?
It's
Are they
all
just
taped
gonna-
off.
You know that when the students come back, are they gonna leave it all taped off or?
The school is waiting to see what Dawson Creek will do.
School district.
Yeah, and that sort of seems to be what's going on, is everybody's kind of waiting to see what the other municipality does, and oh, what are you guys doing, we'll do this, and so, and like I say, literally the language from the province of BC's health officer was do whatever you think is easy.
I think it should be if it's really, really hot out, maybe we can bring it back to that. But right now, with it raining and cool and we don't know if it's gonna stick to the structure or not, right? We don't know how long it stays on metal. A lot of our structures are metal.
So with the rain, it's getting washed,
Yeah, it's not sanitized.
but it's still getting washed.
Yeah.
Is it posted on those playgrounds, use at your own risk?
That's a good question. That I don't know if that language is on there, Councillor Hubert. At the end of the day, the play structures are use at your own risk type of facility. We do inspect them.
But you
once
know,
a
we
month.
have to get signs on everything now, Chris. It was on Facebook.
Yeah.
You know. In places unless there's signs.
Yeah, nobody's
When we
responsible for their own actions anymore.
No.
Last Friday when we reopened the park and the skate park, in the postings that we did say it was use at your own risk.
Yeah, in the posting.
Well, it's what we put on Facebook, what we put on the sign over at the post office. We made sure it said, use at your own risk. For the structure down at, Goose Park.
There was lots of people.
The playground equipment, I'm kind of opposed to having that open up now because we have residents that are not self-isolating and they'll be busy. It's not just contaminating, it's just they're not social distancing. So I do have concerns with the playground material. And how do you tell a little toddler
Not to lick the
or
slide.
they'll go within 6 feet, like, it's asking for.
I agree with Councillor Hebert. Outside of the how do we sanitize it, really, we've got no ability so the slide, prime example, how do we stop 3 kids from lining up right behind each other to use the slide? I don't think,
No, I don't think
as
so.
a small
It's hot, hot, hot.
organization, we can reasonably do that.
I think the obvious response there is the parent who is supervising.
You know, a lot of the parents don't supervise.
Yeah.
Do you know at 10 o'clock at night, there's lots of kids in that park before the COVID thing?
Are those the same little 3 that be lining up at the bottom of the ladder to go up for a little 2-foot slide?
Yep.
So keep the park structures closed.
Yes.
But I think we need to discuss about the park because of all those beer cans and stuff in that machine that we were in today, that Blair, the staff down at the Public Works had to pick up down at the park.
Yes, there was.
I think people are very disgraceful for doing that.
So
There's
close
garbage
it.
can. Yeah, and I think
Close it.
maybe we should close it for a bit again
And I'm
because of the views.
Who's
And say why we closed it.
Love to.
Being abused.
Because that was a lot of beer
There-
cans and pop
Probably
cans
cans,
and you name it that was in that box, that truck.
Okay,
Or-
so there was beer cans, garbage, anything else? Because when I
A
post, I
battery?
wanna know what I'm posting.
The battery?
The batteries from the sewer lagoon. Yeah.
What?
That wasn't from Bruce Park? No,
There
that
was
was,
tons of
that was us,
garbage.
that was
Okay.
our battery for the
All
discharge.
beer cans.
Yep.
So is that a motion?
There.
So we're making a motion to open up the skateboard park,
It's over here.
but reclose Poos Park because of garbage left.
Disrespectful people.
Being abused.
Or the park being abused with the pre-opening.
Or do we have the bylaw officer patrol it?
He already does.
So-
But it's not a 24/7 type patrol, right?
But can he lock it at night? Because I think that's what's happening, is they're partying at 10 o'clock at night,
So,
9, 10 o'clock at night.
You could give
He-
them tea and.
I can speak to, I mean, that's not part of his assigned regular duties, but Sam, or the bylaw officer is very, very accommodating. I'll ask him, your worship, and see if he's okay. Worst case scenario, we could also do it at 3:30. Public Works could do it as part of their.
Well, no,
their
because
duty.
people.
I can always do it on the way home.
Make sure,
I
yeah.
have a key to the park, so I mean, I could go down, the whip down there and lock it.
And it will be posted why we're closing it and why.
Well, yeah, we should be saying something about it being a mess down there and that our staff had to pick it out, the garbage up when they could use the garbage cans that are only 10 feet away from them.
And the playgrounds will not be open up.
So, okay, so just, what was the decision then, or the motion to
Well,
close Poos Park completely?
No, we'll leave it open, we'll leave it open as long as we have somebody patrolling it.
Okay,
But it has to be closed.
Will be closed at night?
At nighttime.
okay.
So then you and I have.
What
10,
time?
9 o'clock,
9 o'clock?
yeah, or even 8 o'clock.
Yeah, because that's.
Okay.
Because that's when they start to roll.
Okay, I'll
Yeah.
speak to the bylaw officer and see if he can do that as part of a routine. Okay.
Are you gonna have a sign there saying park closed at 8 p.m.?
Well, she's gonna be in there.
Yeah, you can get through some.
But all the other parks, we're reopening them, but we're
No,
closing off the structures.
Yeah, reopening without the play structure.
Well, okay, you're both saying two different things here. You're
Structures?
saying the park, and
The structures are closed.
so you want Public Works to go and put yellow tape around all the structures? Because right now what's on there
They're
is
just on the
yellow.
gates, they're not going in there, people aren't going in there.
Playground.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I'm asking.
The playground.
If you want the playgrounds open,
Oh,
you
yeah, that-
have to take the yellow tape off, and then they have to go and put yellow tape around the playground equipment. Is that what you want them to do?
Guess that's what we're gonna have to do, right?
Why would we open the gate? though?
Or do you want to-
If they can't, I wouldn't open it.
People walk down there.
And I'm talking about the playground.
We're talking about the playground down at the park.
No, we're talking about
No,
these
we're talk-
playgrounds
yeah.
here.
We're talking about things
Part of
like
the
town hall.
okay, hold it. These gates here are taped.
There's no,
They don't need to be used. They don't
that's
need to
what we
be
wanna know.
cut. Those stay like that.
Okay,
The park,
the
Down
structure
there.
gets taped and the gates get closed at 8 PM.
right.
Yes.
Okay,
What about the playground that's
No.
up at Nosco?
I understand. You understand now?
The park, the Hardin Park, what is that? That's taped off, that's,
It's just like here, it's just taped at the entrances.
okay,
And same with Peterson.
Peterson
Yeah.
Park.
park,
Yeah.
So we're leaving those
closed.
closed, okay.
Everybody okay with that? Can I get a consensus on that?
Yes.
Yes.
All in favor? Okay.
And somebody had asked me about, item number 2, the garbage truck.
Yeah, me.
So, okay, thank you, Counselor. Yeah, the garbage truck is still out of commission. There is a still undiagnosed throttle control issue with it, so we've got a contractor that is doing the garbage right now.
Would it be feasible for us to keep the contractor?
Potentially, yeah, so.
Barb?
The garbage pickup by the contractor was very early. They came and picked up the garbage before 8:30.
Yeah.
And as it went down the road, it went through my head, ooh, there'll be a lot of people that miss their garbage.
And there was, and we got them to come back, and we've asked them to fix that issue, so,
Okay.
yeah.
I just,
Yeah,
So the amount of money that we've invested in repairing the garbage truck
The $90,000 garbage truck, yeah?
is what now?
and that's part of the difficulty in running old equipment, Councillor Hebert. You can throw a pile of money at it and still not end up with something that's usable at the end of the day either.
Exactly, so I think we should have a limit set on how far we want to go.
So we're over 15,000 into it just in the last few weeks alone, and there's still some type of throttle issue. So then I was asking the director of public works, that's what I was on my phone on the other presentation. So the issue we're having is it starts up, idles fine, and they go to press the gas, it does nothing. You know, it just creeps along. So somehow the pedal is not communicating with the motor, and if they just slowly press it, well then it'll drive, but at the end of the day, it's not safe to operate on the roads like that. They can't properly accelerate, so, and this is an issue with the actual engine and the manufacturer, so we need the diagnostic tools again to try and figure it out, because it's computerized. So,
how much does it cost per year to get a contractor to do the garbage?
we're working on quotes with that right now.
Guesstimate on that, even?
A guesstimate, we're probably, well, I hate to say it in front of the camera because then that sort of
Okay.
puts a limit. Let me reach out to you by email on that, and I'll send council the information I've got, because the quotes we're getting are kind of just off the cuff.
I think you need to bring it back to council
Yeah.
if you're spending any money, much more money on the garbage truck.
Yeah,
No, garbage truck's parked.
it's parked right now.
Or,
But at the end of the day, we could be into it, we could need another $5,000 throttle control module, I have no idea.
$15,000 is your limit, is it not, right?
Well, that's what we
And then you
spent,
have to bring it over to council.
that's what we
That's
spent to do.
You've already spent that for a year.
Yeah, but the issue we had with it is it's 15,000, and it was successive things that got us there. It wasn't, oh, it's a $15,000 repair, it was, you know, $1,500 for towing, and 4,000 for this part, and 3,000 for that part, and then the installation, and it's been some of the parts that's got us to 15 grand.
And
Otherwise, like you say,
staff man hours.
yeah, that doesn't include the time the directors spent with it and calling for parts and line, it's just.
Okay,
the
get
things-
to
It's not.
Got fixed. Action item.
Well, just one thing to consider, and, you know, not stepping in the way of council here, just one thing to consider though, is what you're considering doing is taking work away from employees who are covered under the bargaining unit and giving that work to contractors.
Can I stop you there?
No.
Yeah, you are. That is operational. That is Chris's job to handle that part of it, not ours. And he is the manager.
Actually, I thought I was designated direct for that, so sorry if I misspoke.
I can actually clarify that, because it is a valid point too, that is in the union agreement. My interpretation of that, Councillor Grover, is as long as we're not reducing hours or cutting hours of existing staff to replace them with contractors, we're okay. So if we bring a contractor in to do that 4 hours a week to do garbage, right, as long as we're not saying to the senior operator who's doing that work right now, hey, we're cutting your hours by 4, permanently to give it to this contractor, we're okay.
I'm good with whatever you do, I just wanted to throw that out.
No, that's a valid point.
Okay, action items.
All right. 14.
Anybody see anything?
Is our buddy bench here, or?
No, it's not here yet.
Okay.
It's been ordered. It
Yeah.
was just ordered.
What about Crackle Special Project? Have you heard from the candidate?
No, and what happened with that? I wanted to explain that. I was gonna do that in my report. Okay. Thank you.
Alright. Nobody sees anything?
Capital?
Yeah.
Number 2.
Okay.
Are they just painting the old library side?
Chris?
No, we wrote it down as painting, but the project is gonna be to replace any boards and stuff like that that are rotten. And then we're also looking at the window casings and then those couple of left windows too.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilors' calendars?
There's no meeting, so.
So, Councilor White.
Just the letter to appoint the people, and the fact that Courtney's trying to make the library safe according to WCD so that we can open it.
Okay. Councilor Smith.
I got an email about a meeting tomorrow, conference call. Ken's name was on the list.
That's a regional district meeting. That was just sent out wrong. I have no idea why.
Okay, I'm just checking on that because Ken's was on it and my name's on it and your name is
So I
on
thought that was a sub-regional one when I read it. And then I got a letter or an email from the city of Dawson Creek. Perfect. And I thought, whoop. Huh? That's confused.
Yeah.
Councilor Church.
Oh, okay. Beautiful color. It's lovely, you guys. I just want to comment on that. Why did you put it in color?
It wasn't on purpose. It was by accident, sorry. Don't get too used to
So we
it.
can look forward to black and white.
As
Once in a
council,
while,
you
you
can
can have
go
a
for
full
color, but
I know.
they reset our computers and they used to default to monochrome.
Right.
And when they went to reset them, they took that off. So
I just thought-
this week, everything's being printed in color.
Because we're so cheap, we can't be doing that.
Now, I said that I would make sure that council wrote that letter to Miss Rob. And so, yeah, are you taking care of this letter or are we gonna get together and do this letter?
Miss.
You guys are going to do it?
What letter?
Okay.
To Miss Ross
To
about
Miss
the
Rob.
sunflower seeds.
Oh, the sun.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I just want to make sure that's done. And the seniors. Now, I did get a phone number And then I messed up the iPad and had to return it here to get it fixed. And when I got back, I didn't have a phone number anymore. And so I went to our museum person and I said, "Get so-and-so, give me a call for Wednesday." And I didn't get a call. So I will still do it. I just haven't done it yet.
Are you talking about the seniors or Trump
The
House?
seniors Trombley House. Yes.
Okay, if Barb Frost is the
Yes.
last, and but who else is on that board? Do you know?
Joyce Doonan?
Joyce Doonan?
Could talk to her too, I guess.
Yes.
But, yeah.
Oh, I've already talked to Joyce.
Oh, have you?
Yeah. She says they're living, and that's why we're looking at it.
Oh, okay. But they know I'd like them to phone. I've been asking for quite some
You have
time.
to chase Barb down if you want to speak to her.
I realize that. And I've spoken to her face to face, and here I am.
Yeah, you're still alive.
And,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, that's it, okay.
Kendra,
So on June the 2nd, there's going to be a conference call or Skype, whatever it's called, with Courtesy Matters. And one of the things that they were asking that we would bring up is some of the priorities, some of the situations that we're facing, you know, especially in light of the COVID and businesses starting up. Is there anything that we wanted to mention specifically to this Courtesy Matter groups as it pertains to activity within Bruce Goopy?
we'll be opening this up
So
when WCB regulations and they have all their safety.
what are we what are we reopening?
The office.
The office.
The museum is what we want to talk about too.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what doesn't care if we open it or not. That I talked to Bob Zimmerwall. We'll let you finish your report. You go.
What about, how's our food bank doing? Are they going through money or could they need a contribution from Courtesy Matters to
You
get?
know, there's a lack of information.
They just did it.
There's a lack of information even within the village about who do we contact? Who is our local contact person?
Charmin Peters?
Is there a
She's at
sign?
Stitchables.
Right?
She's at Stitchables because of the COVID stuff.
Yeah.
She's taking donations at
You
Stitchables.
meet them at the back door and then you contact her and she comes right over and.
So who was it again?
Charmin
Charmin
Peters.
Peters.
It's on Facebook. I put her
Okay.
information on there. Huh?
At the back of Stitchables.
Not the back, just call her.
Okay.
Her phone number's there.
Okay. So yeah, sorry.
I was just to add a quick note about the food bank. Council's direction at the last meeting or two was to put the food bank in contact with the grant writer. And there's been half a dozen emails back and forth. The grant writer's actively pursuing grants on.
Okay, and but there's also a free non-profit organization one through the regional district that we all paid into through that sheet that we did.
Through the Peace River Regional District, that was a one-time offer through, which ended March 14th. You had to have your application in. So we passed that. However, we need to find out if we're registered with food banks in BC.
Well, they
Because
are.
there may be assistance there.
Yes, because the federal government is giving
United
money.
Way.
Yes.
The guy you talked to.
I don't believe they are because I have an email from the grant writer recommending to the president that they get registered with food
Okay.
banks. Yeah.
So that seems to be headed in the right direction. You know, and what can we do for the promotion of our businesses here? Like Les is doing his own thing. It's fantastic, you know.
You love
Flat-
doing it.
Yeah, Throwback Thursdays, right? That man is just.
On
that's
Facebook.
him, yeah.
Oh, I love those pictures.
That's actually Carolyn.
Oh, it's Carolyn, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, good for
Carolyn has
her.
done that from
They are.
forever since she's been on that board.
Well, that's awesome.
And Facebook
man.
happened.
You know, and then there's a will to survive and thrive here because You know, we have the unofficial coffee shop happening outside of Redwood because you're not allowed to sit in there. I don't know if that's changed right
Is
now.
that right? Tell me about it.
No, they're having a coffee shop outside there.
Oh, so they got
have coffee right
tables outside?
No, by your pickup.
At Canadian Tire, they do the same thing
Okay.
every morning.
So, but I gotta tell you, it's Papa Don's restaurant. What is the phone number for Papa Don's restaurant?
5777.
786-5777, and he's open from 9 till 2.
And he also serves wings too, doesn't he?
Yes.
So it's pizza and wings.
Wings or soup, salads, sandwiches.
Ice cream.
He's got a full menu.
And then we went to the Redwood and we had cheeseburgers and and fried chicken and salads, the whole bit. So, you know, our businesses are still doing business. And if anyone is like me the odd time and don't want to cook supper, just go to one of our local businesses. You know, and some really good food to be had.
And also Stitchables too is really reaching out to people that are self-isolating, want quilting material thread. You phone her and she'll reach over there and she'll have everything packaged up what you want.
It's curbside.
Yeah.
Curbside. Nice.
They're gone.
I forgot to bring up about our beautiful banners up Main Street. The one at the top of the hill is just straight.
Does council want those banners replaced? So usually we replace them at Canada Day. Would council like them just taken down and just don't put anything else up?
I'm fine with that. Nothing right now, we don't need to spend any
But
money
the
on that.
Canada Day one that's at the top of the hill, it's just shredded.
Okay.
Can we think of something to do for July 1st, whether we, our vehicles,
Well,
put
that's what-
flags on them?
I was talking about that movie.
I know, but I'm thinking July 1st,
For
the parade. You know what I mean? Get our fire department, we'll each get our personal vehicle, put some Canada flags, and do a half hour beep, 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 and get
Oh,
some
my
music
God.
blaring. And, you know what I mean? Let's not just roll over and play dead. Let's do something.
That's a great idea.
And we'll
then
all
should
be
we do the
celebrating. Pardon me?
We did the movie that night.
Yeah,
What are we gonna do with that?
Well, at the fair hall.
but that would celebrate our staff.
We could.
And the staff could join us too in their vehicle saying staff and, you know what I mean, it's Canada Day.
I love that idea, Mark. I do.
I'm not driving. I'll run over.
No, but
Well, you
Vienna
can
School,
go
do
to the-
whatever you want. Like, you know,
You can wave from the back of the Tacoma.
but we shouldn't,
Side by side.
we should not
Because it only
just
goes 5 miles an hour.
go by with nothing. Sorry, Patty.
That said, who doesn't have magnets for their car? I believe nobody does except
I do.
I do.
you do.
I do.
Do you have ones that say?
I don't have them with me, you guys have.
Magnets for your car?
Does it
Yes.
have our name on it? No.
Okay, so the only one that has them is, and you, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I might need new ones.
Yours say CAO?
No,
No.
they just say Village of
I'm
Kooskoobee.
talking about the personalized ones.
I-
Doesn't say
I,
counselor.
I'm not including you in this, so there.
I probably need new stuff.
Do you?
Actually, you know what we should drive is ATVs. With mud and, you know what I mean, no helmet. It's on. That'd be more.
Take the exhaust off of it and do catwalks. But definitely, your worship, folks, we could put together an informal parade for sure with you guys, the fire department, and
Then we
Maybe
could all
business
come
is
back
on-
for
And we could
a
ask the museum
Chicken
if
salad
they wanted to
sandwiches.
put something in, and the library,
Oh.
just a vehicle.
I got it now.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have to be big, but the museum, you know what I mean, maybe somebody have, and we should reach out to Tom's Lake, they have an antique fire truck, but that's the fire department's.
Yeah.
But they're always here every year. But it's just, so what if it's
They're
only 10
working,
people?
they're working on our old fire truck over there.
Yeah, just remember too, folks, we don't have a ton of time to put something like that. I mean, there's not.
You
a ton
don't
of-
decorate it whenever
They
you
just show up and
Yeah,
go.
that's it. There's not a ton of logistics into just putting on a quick parade, but.
No, you just,
What other building could you use a music for a movie besides the fire hall?
For the side of the building?
It's the one side of the school.
See, what about social distancing? You still have.
You're in your
to-
vehicle,
You're in your
vehicle. You're in your
It's like a
vehicle,
drive-by.
you turn it to 899.
if you did it beside the school, you'd have all that parking.
With the school, right?
Now, we could do it on the side of the fire hall and use our 3 vacant lots as the parking.
You get all chewed up.
And what
If
kind
it's
of movie are we
already
gonna show kids or?
And then we're talking something pretty late too, so we'd have to have, if we're gonna show a movie on the side of the building, it'd have to be after 10 PM, it would have to be dark, so we're out there till midnight, 1 o'clock, depending on the movie.
No.
Yeah.
No, scratch out of it.
Yeah.
And then you have everybody sleeping in their
It's
car
fine,
in the
it's
parking
too
lot.
late, tell you
Yeah.
now.
Okay, so you're done, Robert?
So,
Yes.
try to put together a quick parade.
Yeah, just to anybody that wants to get into it.
You want us to advertise this to everybody,
No.
or is
No.
this
No,
just?
it's ours. It's the village.
Our contribution to the village.
But are we gonna let anyone know we're gonna do it?
Well, of course we.
Yes, we are.
Marlene's gonna get on Facebook, and she's gonna tell everybody. She's gonna friend everybody.
I like it.
Do I give likes?
You do.
Oh,
You do. What about the flowers?
Hey, can I do my report now?
Yeah.
Okay. So, when you guys came in, you seen a bundle of trees?
Yes.
Yes.
The Swan Lake Enhancement Society donated them to the village again to give out to the residents. There's 150 trees to give out. So, I'd like to just thank them, and Sandy, you put something on the website, thank you.
Just to clarify, last year we had started with saying residents could only have one. Are we stipulating just one, or are we just gonna let them take as many as they want? Because some people came and took like the whole bushel.
No.
Because we won't. Well, how did it go? Like, did they go way fast, or could we have used more?
Well, we started by giving out one per person, and then about 3 hours into it, you told us to just let them take as many as they want, and they were gone in a day.
Okay. Because they'll dry out, like, we have no
Yeah.
cold storage for them, right?
So we'll just let them come and get them as they want them, because I think what we're gonna do to avoid having contact, I think during the day while we're here, we'll just put them outside and we'll put a note that says they're here for you to come and help yourself. And then if they're not all gone at night, we'll pull them back in and put them back up.
Because
the
they sat
next
in my
day.
garage, I think, for 4 days or something, and they were really dry when we gave them out last year.
Yeah, they're really wet right now, so.
Yeah, he just picked them up for me.
Okay, so I'll put something up tomorrow morning and then we'll see.
Well, what do you
when
guys
they're
think? How many do you think? I mean, this is council's.
Couple
They-
people took
they-
like 10 and 20 for their properties.
But
Last
where
year.
are they gonna put them all?
Well, I don't know, some people were lining,
No.
maximum 5 per person.
Yeah.
Do we need any in Bruce Park? Since we lost all those trees?
I would think if we're gonna do something in Bruce
They gotta
Park,
be big.
yeah, we probably wanna go with.
Bigger ones.
Okay, can I finish my report? I'd like to go home tonight. What happened at Notice? It was all dug up. What happened?
There was,
Go ahead.
Either one of you.
there was, water coming up from a pipe in the ground.
And was it our pipe?
And it was washing out the access into the property.
But it wasn't our pipe?
It was our pipe. Well, it's not our pipe, it was pipe that's been there since
God, was forever.
Time immortal.
1920s probably.
Probably since the arenas were there.
Yeah,
It was a gas station.
so it was taken care of, and the village did come and address that, and then it was made known that it was no issue because it was on.
Point of order, I'd like to make a motion that we continue past 9 o'clock.
And then,
Second. Motion. Okay, sorry.
and then Nova's finished with covering it with gravel, some of their own gravel and packing it.
Okay.
Problem solved.
Okay, good.
And thank you to the village for looking into that. Chris was there in person. It was very much nice to see him.
Was he wearing his blue safety jacket?
He was.
And his hard hat?
Nope.
No.
And his pink little steel-toed boots.
Did he? Oh, you didn't wear your purple ones. I talked to Bob Zimmer today over student grants. He's gonna get back to me on that. And then, I went down with Chris down to the trails in the lagoons, the quadding trails that we have. And, interesting. And then I sent a text message to Dale to see if the kids, council can go to the sub-regional meeting, and he's gonna get back to me on Monday.
Where the kids?
Where's the kids? That's my report. Okay, Marlene. Chris? Yeah, but Marlene's gotta do her.
She's gotta do her thing.
What do I have to do? Make a
We're gonna
motion?
close the
Now we're
motion.
at 14?
Go in camera?
Yeah.
As per section 91G of the community charter, as per section G, litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality.
I'll second.
Discussion.
Turn off the camera.